introduction.
Hello, my name is Ben Landmesser, and this is my mom, Susanne Mentzer. She is an opera singer, a teacher, and an activist. We are here today in Griffith Park in beautiful Los Angeles. My mom came down to visit, and we're going to ask her some questions today. All right, so, hey, how are you?
Great.
Yeah, it's like we haven't been hanging out for 27 years.
Who are you?
I'm your son. Okay, so my first question is one that I think about a lot. You were a single mom, you traveled a lot, working, singing around the world, and had a baby on your back for some of that. What was that like? What were some of the challenges?
That's a good question. The challenges were, first of all, was making sure you were healthy
Sure.
and that you were happy. So when you couldn't speak, that took a lot of, attention trying to figure out when you were healthy and when you were not healthy. And you were pretty good traveling. Whenever we would go overseas, though, and you had jet lag, you would get a high fever. And that was always so nerve-wracking, for any parent. But also because you slept the whole flight, so we couldn't figure out why you had jet lag, right? But I always had au pairs or nannies to come help, and your dad would come help sometimes. And we had lots of luggage and had inflatable and deflatable toys and a bathtub and everything you could imagine for travel. And back then, they don't have nearly as much as they do today.
Were there any? Was there a particular victory, a mom victory that sticks out to you?
A mom victory.
Single mom in Europe.
Oh gosh, that's a good question too. I don't know. I mean, I've told you this, but we always tried to change planes in places that had a nursery, a fun nursery, and there was one in Zurich that had a big giant hippo, and they had a wooden playhouse. And so even when you were really, really little, we would always travel there, and it was something familiar for you. Yeah.
Interesting.
But you were real easy. You were the kid that could sit for 9 hours without a problem.
Yeah.
The biggest challenge was when it was just you and me, would be if I had to go to the bathroom or something on the plane, and I didn't want to, they're small.
Yeah.
I couldn't just hold you and do that. So I'd have to trust strangers, but that was okay. Where are they going to go? They're on the plane.
Am I remembering correctly that there used to be hammocks for babies?
Yes.
That would up by the luggage?
That's right. They hung on the luggage rack, and they would
so
sway
you
with
just
the plane.
You just put me in a hammock and I would.
Yeah.
It sounds risky. Was
it
there
does,
safety?
doesn't it?
Yeah, that sounds.
I don't
crazy.
think there was a safety thing either.
Oh.
They give you bassinets, and they give us toys. So we have lots of airplane toys still, little airplane books and stuff.
That's great.
Yeah.
I guess thinking about all the stuff that you had to be a parent, all the gadgets and things. How has technology changed being a parent, in your opinion? From the way you were brought up to the way you kind of raised me in that big transition.
Well, I think communication.
Right.
Because when I was growing up, the phone rates went down on Sunday nights, and so if I was away from home, that was the time when you talked to your parents. And it was always every Sunday night, and I've seen that in a movie recently where you missed the Sunday night call. Something's wrong with my daughter.
Yeah.
And for you, it was faxes, and so we would fax because if I was far away and you were home, and I wanted to communicate with you, I couldn't just call because you might be asleep, and vice versa.
Right.
So I would fax you all these long messages in big print as though you could really read them.
Yeah.
But you also had them posted next to your bed. I would do whatever I could to let you know I was still thinking of you and I loved you. And then we talk on the phone sometimes. But nowadays, there's Skype.
Right.
And I know so many parents just totally keep in touch with their kids. So many singer parents.
Yeah.
Are part of their kid's life. They can watch everything that the kid is doing.
Yeah.
It's freaky.
Do you, I guess this is a kind of complicated question, but are you grateful that you had, as you were growing up, traveling, being, away from your family, are you grateful that you had less means of communication?
Oh,
do you know what I mean?
Interesting. Yeah. I never really thought about it because we did a lot of writing letters, letter writing, and it took a long time. I really loved getting letters from my parents, and actually my mom saved all my letters, so I have a history of my life that's fascinating that otherwise we wouldn't have.
Right.
And so I think about you guys, you don't write letters the same way. I mean, some emails, but even that, it isn't as extensive.
Yeah. What do they say in Mad Men? You can't frame a phone call.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But then there's the physical touch thing, and
Right.
I think that was always, we were always happy to see each other again, which is nice.
Yeah.
And we always cried the night before I would leave.
That was the ritual to get it all out.
We both would cry.
Ahead of time.
And then the next day, even though I wanted to cry, you were like, okay, Mom, bye.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
What did your parents think when you went into the arts?
I think they were thrilled. You know, they were really proud of me being able to sing at all.
Yeah.
And my mom was an amateur singer, and I think that I don't think they ever thought I would make a living at it, and I didn't either until I was really starving and had to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that was an eye-opener. It's when you have nothing else, no other skills, you realize
Yeah.
I better get my act together.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was about 24 maybe that I figured that out. Yeah, but I think that they were always very supportive.
They never said, "What about banking?" Or you
No,
know,
no.
they never
But
did that.
they also I had my moments of divadom. You know, I remember my dad was driving me somewhere where I had to sing, and we were running late, and I was like throwing a total hissy fit, which is so not me.
Yeah.
But it was because I don't know, I had to be an artist or something. I was really young.
Before you realized that you could be an artist and also be a calm,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
well-balanced person.
Right.
Interesting.
Right.
Okay, what do you think about me being an artist?
I think it's fabulous. It's a surprise.
Is it?
Because, well, now looking back, I saw glimpses of it when you were little because you liked to sort of stage scenes with your animal toys, and you also liked to dress up in costumes. You go on these rants where you would dress up in every possible thing you could put together. But I mean, you tried a little bit, dabbled in elementary or junior high and high school, but it wasn't like really serious.
Yeah.
You weren't in the drama club or anything like that. And then even when you got to college, I think you were sort of dabbling. And it wasn't until later that you really showed that skill. But what was interesting is, you know, we used to subscribe to Steppenwolf.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that was something really special that we shared.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I did that. And one of the times we were there, you commented on how the people who weren't necessarily the focus of the scene were always in character. And you noticed that at a really, you know, you were still like, you're like a sophomore in high school, and I thought that's really intuitive, you know.
But you don't sometimes just want to like slap me and say like listen, kid, you know.
No, it's your life.
Thanks.
I figure you're going to make your own decisions, and you know, it's your life to live. I never thought I would go as far as I did, and you don't know until you try it, and you don't want to look back and say, I wish I had.
Yeah.
And you know your own life. And you know, we all know how much we want to do. You know, even if I hadn't been a big star, hadn't been that successful, I probably would have continued to perform and do other jobs in between to keep me going.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Because I did work a lot of temp work in the early years. I did a lot of secretarial work to try to help pay for lessons. And like, you know, when you're a performing artist, you're always learning. You're always having to do brush up or take a class or work with people, and that's always going to be an expense. But that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then what, tell me a little bit about your parents as artists. Like what was, you said my grandmother was an amateur singer a little bit.
Yeah.
So like what did they pass on to you, and how did you filter that, I guess, through me, or was any of that conscious, you know?
No, it's all really subconscious, and that's what's weird is I'm a lot like my father, and you're a lot like my father. And even though people who meet me say, oh, you're just like your mother, but my mother was very content to go with whatever the status quo was, whereas you and I think, are always thinking of options or creative ideas. Whether we follow through with them or not is another thing.
Yeah.
And the more I look through my father's life, he just did it. He just went for stuff, and he didn't ever worry about whether he was qualified or whether he knew enough. He would learn it.
Yeah.
He always was learning, and he learned until the day he died, and I think that's a real gift. But I learned that from example.
Right.
Now, you would think I would have had more of an impression from my mother to be a homemaker and stay home more, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I had this other that I didn't even know I had until I had to get out in the real world.
Yeah.
I was very protected as a kid in high school and early college. So.
Do do you feel like your art kind of came as a response, like a rebellion, like a reaction to that, or you know what I mean?
No, I think I had an image of what opera was and opera singing, and it couldn't have been further from the truth.
Yeah.
And I think when I realized that it wasn't something fake, that it wasn't something glamorous, I actually liked it more when I could just be a normal person and do it, because I had this image and I was never going to be grand enough for that field. And I mean, I had my own. They didn't like it that I ran off with somebody so old when I was so young. I was 19, and I don't like it now that I look back. But if I took any of those pieces out, I wouldn't be where I am today. Yeah. That's the interesting thing about life in general.
Right. So you kind of readjusted your view of opera when you first got into it. Now, all this time later, have you evolved your opinion? Like, what is the purpose of opera now?
That's a good question.
You know?
I don't know. It's changing. The opera I fell in love with was very much in love with the challenge of making a sound without a mic and trying to take that and add the drama to it and be convincing as a character. And that's where I was into it. I was not really so concerned about the audience or the critics. I'm glad the audience liked it, but I felt like if I was only concerned with the audience and the critics, I wouldn't be honest to my craft.
Right.
So in some ways I paid for that, because I'm not like a household name, because I didn't want to play that game.
Yeah.
I never wanted a PR person. I never wanted to go in that direction. And that's just the way I am, But it is different, because the arts are tending towards more intimate experiences, because people can see stuff on a screen that seems more intimate, even though it's not. But they want to see things closer, and I think the big opera house model is going to be going out the window.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because, as I say, I don't want the technique to get lost.
Yeah, there's something about it that kind of relies on space and distance. Yeah, yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, it's not nearly as old as theater.
Right.
It didn't really start until the 1700s, late 1600s. So we're talking a shorter amount of time for something to exist. And who knows how they sounded back then,
Yeah.
They may have had little tiny voices. I don't know.
I think we might be getting short on time, so I guess I have just like one more question. This might be a little abstract, but if you could like appear to your parents in a dream the day before you were born, or maybe the day after you were born, and just to give them like a little, whether it's a word of encouragement or a note, a correction or something, like what would it
You mean about the future?
About you, about raising you, what did you need that maybe they needed to hear?
Huh.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, looking back, they were great parents, and they did what they knew. They taught me a lot of self-doubt, and I don't think they intended it that way.
Yeah.
But then again, if I didn't have all that self-doubt, I wouldn't have something to prove to myself, and I wouldn't have worked so hard to try to find myself,
Yeah.
But my mom, when I was little, she used to say that my voice was too loud speaking.
Yeah.
And she used to get upset with me because my elbows were always knocking things over. And I was just a gangly kid, but I learned to feel a little bit self-conscious.
Right. Keeping all that in, the elbows,
yeah,
the voice.
Yeah. And your grandmother, she was very petite and very proper, and I was like this wild pony, I think.
Yeah.
But even as a little kid, my brother and I were all both taught, you don't really feel that way.
Yeah.
And that was hard. Yeah. That was hard. And later, as an adult, they treated me totally different. And as a matter of fact, there were times after the divorce with your dad, my parents came out and stayed with us for a while. And my dad was sitting in the living room before we left, and he said, "I know you'll be fine, Sue," and did his big speech. And then he got home and he called. And this is what I don't know what to do when my dad did stuff like this. And he said, "I think you needed to hear that it's okay to fall apart." And it was huge for them to give me the permission to not have to be tough, because I'm tough enough on myself. And anyway, that was a really revealing thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. And actually, towards his death, he apologized also for not wanting to stay around. And I appreciated that. I mean, he realized that I was having feelings about it.
Yeah.
And that I thought he could live forever, and I wanted to get him back to health. And he said, I know you want me here, but I miss your mother, and I'm really ready to go. And what can you say?
Right.
But that was good that he expressed that.
Mhm.
Instead of me wondering, oh my God, did I not keep him alive? And, you know,
Yeah.
life throws a lot at you.
Yeah.
Never realized it.
Cool.
Anything else?
Well, I mean, I guess the follow up to that might be like, what would you want me to like appear to you in a dream the day I'm born?
Oh, shit.
You know what I mean? Like what?
Oops, cursed.
We'll put that out.
I don't know. I've always lived with mommy guilt.
Yeah.
And I think every mom does. Yeah, every mom lives with mommy guilt, whether they're there all the time or not.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know I did the best I could, but I'm going to get emotional looking back. I think, how did I leave? You know, but you had your dad, and you had lots of love, and I think you knew you were loved. And I'm hoping that what you gathered from both of your parents is that you can do something you love,
Yeah.
and still be an okay person, and you don't have to crap on everybody around you. And that's a hard thing. I mean, it's hard enough to be divorced, and then also to have to be away.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you had a lot of quality time with your dad, and you had quality time with me, which you might not have had if we were all in the same household.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't have a lot of memories of before the divorce, but I don't have a lot of memories of wasted moments. In general. Yeah.
Yeah, we really took any time that was our time with you. It was our time with you.
Yeah.
And even when we were traveling, I never let the nannies get up during the night with you or anything.
Right.
I was not going to let that happen because I'm your mom.
That's right. Cool. I'm grateful for it. I love you.
I love you too.
I love you. Thank you. See ya.